Hi everyone, happy Wicked Wednesday and welcome to Shivers. This upcoming Sunday will be the 2023 Oscar Awards, and like many of you, I probably won't be watching since horror movies are rarely a part of this awards. Today, however, we'll be talking about some of those rare movies that made it to the Oscars as either winners or nominees. Starting out the list with the nominees of Best Picture, the very first movie to ever be nominated was The Exorcist in 1973. Unfortunately, it did not win as it lost to The Sting, but it was the first one ever nominated for Best Picture. Next place we have Jaws of 1975. Also did not win, but it won almost every other category that it was nominated for, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Next is The Sixth Sense, which was nominated for 6 awards, but did not bring any of them home. The Sixth Sense is apparently the most requoted movie of all time, so it is quite a surprise that it did not win anything. Next place we have The Black Swan. Unfortunately, the movie lost the highest reward for film, Best Picture, to The King's Speech. More modern than that, we have the movie Get Out of 2017. This is the first horror movie after 2010 to be nominated for anything, let alone nominated for Best Picture, but Get Out did walk home with some awards. And at our top spot, we have The Silence of the Lambs, which is the only horror movie to ever get Best Picture, although it is a little controversial because Silence of the Lambs won Best Picture under the genre of thriller, not horror, even though the movie is a horror movie. So that is just some extra food for thought for you. So getting into the list of what horror movies actually did win, although only The Silence of the Lambs ever won Best Picture, there are still tons of horror movies that won something. So starting out our list, we have Sleepy Hollow of 1999, won an Oscar for Best Art Direction. This movie has a Rotten Tomato score of 69% and is a Tim Burton movie, so obviously worth watching. Next, we have Bram Stoker's Dracula of 1992, which won an Oscar for Best Makeup, Costume Design, and Sound Effect Editing. Next is The Phantom of the Opera, 1943, which is not necessarily horror, but under the suspense category and music category, but won an Oscar for Best Art Direction and Cinematography. Next is The Exorcist. So although they did not win Best Picture, they did win an Oscar for Best Adaptation of a Screenplay and Best Sound. Next we do have The Black Swan. Again, did not win Best Picture, but won Best Actress Oscar for Natalie Portman and her acting. This movie does have one of the highest Rotten Tomato scores on this list at 85%. And is a really gothic, creepy movie. So I'm honestly surprised it didn't win more than just that. Next we have Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street from 2007 that won an Oscar for Best Art Direction. Also at 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, and also another Tim Burton movie, of course, worth watching. Next we have The Omen of 1976, which won an Oscar for Best Original Score. We have An American Werewolf in London of 1981 that won an Oscar for Best Makeup. We have Misery of 1990, the Stephen King book and movie that won an Oscar for Best Actress for Kathy Bates' performance. This movie has 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde of 1931. This was one of the first in the Oscar category. Also, again, not a horror movie, but worth mentioning as a suspense film. The lead of this movie won Best Actor Oscar. So, next we have The Fly from 1986, which won an Oscar for Best Makeup. This is also the only body horror movie to ever win an Oscar for Best Makeup, so certainly worth mentioning. Next is Rosemary's Baby of 1968, which won an Oscar for Ruth Gordon's performance in the Best Supporting Actress category. Next on the list, we have Aliens of 1986, which won an Oscar for Best Sound Editing and Best Visual Effects. Again, Alien is one that teeters on sci-fi versus horror genre. So it is debated that Alien won awards for science fiction, not necessarily for horror, but regardless, it's nice to see. And then the movie that came before Aliens, the movie Alien in 1979, won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects. In 2017, as we mentioned, Get Out did win an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. This movie has a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, and I mean, I think it deserves every little bit that it has. And in our top spot, we have The Silence of the Lambs, which won 5 Oscars for Best Picture, Best Director, Actor, Actress, and Best Adapted Screenplay. This movie has a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it is very interesting to see the Rotten Tomatoes score as correlated to Oscar-winning movies. I think that goes to a lot of the horror movies that I like to watch, that a lot of normal horror movie likers like to watch, that maybe have a 20% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's like, oh, why? These movies are so good. But it's just written, the reviews are written from the perspective of someone who is going to give them an award, going to present them with an Oscar, and do these movies deserve an Oscar? Maybe not. So I think that gives light to a little bit of the Rotten Tomatoes score and helps us picture it a little bit better. But that is our list. So hope you enjoy watching the Oscars this upcoming Sunday. Thank you for listening to today's Wicked Wednesday. For those of you looking to continue talking about all things spooky, be sure to join the Shivers meetup page. Be actively part of the conversation, discussion, and events. Last night was our biggest turnout. We had the Basics of Spirituality class at Solely Holistic in person and also on Zoom. So even if you don't live in North Carolina, if you live in California, if you live in Pennsylvania, if you live in Florida, if you live in Alaska, you can still be a part of Shivers and join in on conversations, events, Zoom things, all of the fun. So come join, come be a part of it, come hang out with me and like-minded individuals, and hope to see you at things moving forward. So enjoy your week, everyone.